This is Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. On today's program, Dinero Washington joins us. He's CEO of Shreveport's SporTran transit system. That serves not only the Shreveport area, but some of the communities around it. And he is the president of his state transit association. He and I recently co-presented at a conference of small urban network transit systems wrapping around the country. And he told me when he sat down about how he wanted to improve his transit system, but decided to create what he calls the People's Plan. He went out and listened to the public with over 200 meetings, not only among riders, but also among his own employees. And he gained their input and grew a more efficient and reliable transit system with new routes, new ways of running service. He removed bus stop signs and created a real efficient system. And now, because he's built it, they are coming. More and more riders. He's seen real ridership growth on his system. He'll tell you all about it on today's episode of Transit Unplugged.
What does it mean to be a successful public transit agency? What are you doing to lead the way? It's time to learn from the top transit professionals in North America. This is Transit Unplugged with your host, Paul Comfort.
Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort, and today we're at CTAA, the Community Transportation Association of America's Small Urban Network Conference in Athens, Georgia. And I'm excited to be with Dinero Washington. He and I just co-presented a presentation for all the executives from these mid-sized cities around the country at their annual conference here. And Dinero runs one of the coolest mid-sized agencies in the country in Shreveport as CEO. Thanks for being our guest today, Dinero.
Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting me.
Yeah, Dinero, I'm real excited to talk to you today because you have so many great things happening. First off, tell us a little bit about your transit system in general. What have you got going there in Shreveport, Louisiana?
So we're a mid-sized transit agency. We carry about 3 million riders a year. And one of the things we're doing is we're trying innovative initiatives to bring the public and engage the public in public transit. There in Louisiana, we want to make sure that public transit is at the forefront and no longer in the back. So anything that we can do to make innovative initiatives, the people's vision, the people's goal, and the people's plan is definitely a part of what we're trying to produce.
That's great. Tell us about the system itself, some of the metrics, how many buses, how many employees, your budget, how does it work, all that stuff.
So we operate about a $14 million budget each year. We have about 200 employees from day-to-day operation, from bus operators to our own maintenance shop to administrative staff. We operate a paratransit division of about 25 vehicles. We're open 7 days a week, 21 hours a day.
Okay, and what's the size of the city of Shreveport?
The size of the city of Shreveport, we actually encompass a region there.
Okay.
We do the city of Shreveport, the city of Bossier City, as well as the parish of Bossier and the parish of Caddo.
And how many people live there, would you say?
And that's about a 400,000 population area, concentrated area.
Okay, and then your system's name is SporTran. How did you get that name?
So Shreveport is actually short for sport, and sport is short for Shreveport. And so Tran is for transit. So mix those two together, SporTran.
I got you.
That's how it came about.
Very good. How long have you been there as CEO?
I have been there now as the CEO for 6 years. I've been with the agency for 9.
What'd you do prior?
Prior to that, I worked for a company called Loomis Armor. I looked at a lot of their safety initiatives and safety practices.
Okay, great. Tell us about the culture of your agency and how you've been making it more progressive.
So one of the things that I'm a huge fan of is, number one, is starting with employee engagement. So when I first got to the system and really took over, I kind of listened. 3 years being in I went from roles of director of safety to the assistant general manager to the general manager and then to the CEO role. So I had a lot of listening sessions with the employees. So you try to figure out and engage, what do your employees want? That's your biggest asset. If your employees are not happy, your system, you can try to do whatever vision you want to do. You'll never push forward with that plan. So one thing we tried to do was try to figure out what could we do to engage the employees, make sure that they were happy. And then from that, we moved into progressive initiatives, listen at the citizens, listen at the stakeholders, those political officials. And so we put together what I call the people's plan, the people's vision, as well as the people's goals. So each thing that we do, we have to categorize under one of those standpoints. If we're not just going to go out and do something today and it doesn't fit our vision or goals, because it's not what the people want. So as we build out and transform our system into what I consider a true regional transit system and build the goals of the people, I think we're going to see great things happen over the next few years.
Now, are you from Shreveport?
I am from Shreveport.
Yeah.
From Shreveport, moved away, but it's always good to come back home. And I think that's the most exciting part about what I'm doing now is that not only am myself and our team are making these changes and being very progressive, but you're able to see things happen in your own community.
Right.
And when you can transform your own community and bring things to light, that's a great thing that you can always look back on and say, hey, one day my kids are going to be able to see this. I'm doing this for my grandkids, you know. So I always take that to heart each day. And I think when you do that each day and you go in and you're not about self, but you're truly about what the people want, what your employees need, and you're personable, I think you become a lot more successful. And that's just been my goal throughout life and definitely throughout this role as CEO of the transit property.
That's great. So talk a little bit more about the culture and how did you listen to, how are you listening now and how did you listen to your employees and what are they saying?
So the culture, it's always interesting. You know, I start by, you know, and I tell people this, normally start our staff meetings with this, you're not going to please everyone. And
Abraham Lincoln. I please all people all the time.
You're not going to please everyone. So when you understand that concept, but you understand that you take those initiatives and you listen to what they've told you so far, and then you bring it back and you put it into a plan. And sometimes it's been personable. You know, one of the things that I believe in is if you tell me something or you share something with me and I'm able to put together a vision or a plan that I think addresses some of those initiatives, you know, go back and say, hey, Sally, hey, Joe, you know, I really appreciate this. This is what we're going to do with the information you gave me. It might not be exactly what you gave me, but I think, you know, this meets the goals and the culture of what you're trying to set for as this agency. You're trying to set forward to make your job better. I think that really changes the culture because, number one, as I stated earlier, personable contact is huge to me because, you know, a lot of times you get to a role and you forget your employees are who truly make the agency successful. You come up with a lot of initiatives, the team comes with a lot of initiatives, but if the employees don't buy into it or you don't get their feedback and kind of make adjustments around their plan, then your culture becomes a culture top down versus a team or a family. One of the things that I say at SporTran every day, I don't really use the word team, but I use the family. We're together more than sometimes we're with our regular family.
Right.
So we are a family. One family member's down or one family member is not in agreement, then sometimes we had to step back and take a look. You know, it's just like family. You might not always agree, but you have to love on that family member. You have to figure out exactly what we can do to make things better for that family member. And that's just kind of the way I take as in my role. If I hear family members down, I think I should check on that family member. I understand the agency sometimes get large and you can't talk to everybody,
right.
But you get a sense. You do get a sense. I think when you're truly connected with your agency, one of the things that I've come to realize is no matter what happens, you can tell when the culture's changed. You can tell when something's not right. You can tell when the mood's not right in your agency.
Kind of have your finger on the pulse, right?
And then you go, and I don't start asking a lot of questions. When I see things are not feeling right, that's when I get out to the people. Mm-hmm. That's when I change where I'm eating my lunch at today. I'm not eating lunch at my desk. I'm going to the break room. I'm going to the employees' break room. I'm going to the bus operators' break room. I'm going to where the administration staff is eating lunch at today. I want to sit down and I just want to engage. And you'll be amazed just going into those settings. It opens up. People feel like, you know, we're just dialoguing about other things, and then you're able to slide in.
Right.
And
manage it by walking around, in a sense, right?
Yeah, walking around, you know, and that's another thing that I do very heavily. Sometimes some people don't like it, but, I trust every director I have under me. But sometimes just being in those departments, walking out to your maintenance shops, saying, hey, how you doing today? Just walking around.
Yeah, what's up? Something wrong?
And making your presence known definitely opens up a culture for the employees. They feel like you're not unapproachable. Mm-hmm. When you walk through the shop and there's something they maybe want to tell you or show you, and sometimes it's not always bad. Sometimes they're working on innovative initiatives right there in the shop. Us getting electric buses, the guys getting their hands on electric buses now, you'll be amazed. I walked in the shop one day, they're like, oh my God, we just did this. We wanted to show you this. Oh my God, we're involved. We're doing this now. They're new. And so I think that changes the culture of your organization when they see that they can tell you something. It's not always bad, but sometimes they just want to show somebody, oh my God, thank you for that training that you given us,
That's good.
So I think that has really changed the culture, with us being 100% alternative fuel on our bigger heavy duty vehicles. That has been a culture change. In 2010, when we started that change, We had all diesel buses, and we started switching to CNG buses. CNG buses was the worst thing ever when you looked at it from a maintenance standpoint. So one of the things that I did is I had listening sessions with those mechanics in the shop. What is not working? What don't you understand? I'm sorry, I go to these meetings and they tell me it's just as simple to work on the CNG bus as the diesel bus. So what am I missing?
Yeah.
What values?
What'd they tell you? Do you remember? That was a while ago, I know.
But they told us a lot of things. There was a lot of things such as certain things they just didn't have the training and understanding for.
Right.
Certain things that they were scared of, misinformation. They thought the bus was going to blow up if they did X, Y, Z. They thought the bus was going to blow up if you did X, Y, Z. So I think some of that thing was just comforting.
It's more information you had to provide them.
And so what we did was we went back and we created training programs, worked with those manufacturers to bring in additional training, bring in resources so that they can feel supported. The same thing happened when we brought electric buses in. And I had a meeting 3 weeks ago now. And it was the funniest thing is I made that exact reference. I said, some of them were saying, oh my God, I'm scared I'm going to get shot by electric buses. And I'm scared this is going to happen. The bus is going to do this. If I do this, the bus might blow up. And I was like, well, many of you have been with us for a while now. And I remember back in 2012 and 2013 when we were having all those CNG meetings, you told me the same things. You absolutely hated CNG vehicles. We have over 40 CNG vehicles on the property now, and you absolutely love them. I mean, that's the only buses you have besides the electric buses now. And that same concept. So I told them, I'm going to work on getting training. 3 weeks later, actually this week, before I left the property, Monday through Thursday, this week, Proterra is actually on site providing additional training. We made those same phone calls to say, hey, I need some assistance. And I think when you work with your vendors and your vendors are supportive of those initiatives, I think we're going to see the turn in electric buses at our property as well. I think sometimes not only are we looking at it from a mechanic standpoint, but we have to look at it from a bus operator standpoint. It's different. I have to look at it from a passenger standpoint. Sometimes the buses are so quiet, our electric buses, that it's definitely changed the concept of them driving the bus and how they operate the bus. Some of them just are so used to hearing certain sounds and certain noises that we had to retrain them as well. Because, some of them would be speeding in an electric bus and not even realize it because they're just used to
monitoring the revving of the engine.
They monitor the sound. So approaching stops, buses are so quiet. With passengers sometimes have their headsets on or whatever, and they're just out and they're used to hearing the bus approach.
Yeah, they may have their foot over on the curb, right?
So I think it's been a training concept for all three sectors, from management to operations to maintenance, even to passengers. It's just really been a training. And I think those are the positive things. Listen to the people, listen at the culture of your organization, and putting action plans in place. I think everything deserves an action plan.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that because you've had over the last few years a revolutionary change in your transit system. You've made dramatic changes, and now you're one of the few transit systems in America that's seeing growth in ridership. So let's talk about what your vision was, and then I'd like you to walk us through some of those steps, those 200 meetings you had and all that, how you rebooted your whole bus network, how you're bringing in AVs, all the cool things you've got going on there in a city like Shreveport. Tell us what the vision was and how you actually walked it through. I think most people that listen to this podcast are in the transit industry, so they're looking for someone to kind of help provide a roadmap to get to success, these new changes.
So, I've always heard throughout life, you got to have a vision. And the vision when, I actually took the CEO seat is that it was time to make changes in the transit in Shreveport and Bossier. And the reason I say that is because we get to a point in life where things are good because we become stale. And we come in, we want to do our daily routines, and we don't want to face adversity. So the vision was, let's get the people's vision. And let's figure out the people's vision, make that our vision, and let's push that vision forward. So the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to go to the community and say, just provide us feedback. As the CEO of the organization, I'm coming to your community. I want to sit down and I want to hear what works and what doesn't work as far as public transit for you. We had some other approaches and ideas that we wanted to do. We felt like we needed some changes in routes, but that meeting wasn't the focus on that information at that point. That information was to get information from them before I start presenting the information we had. So we took those series of meetings. We did about 20 of those different meetings in different communities with different neighborhood associations. Very good attendance of those. Got a lot of feedback. And we were able to come back, and about 3 months later, we did about a 90-day later, we were working on hiring a contractor to come in to look at a transit development study. We were able to go back 90 days later to those same groups and say, we heard you. We've hired now a consultant. We want you to share some of those same ideas, but we also want to tell you some of the things that we want to do. And we start unveiling some of those things. Some of those things were taken well. Some of those things were taken, well, we don't know just about that yet. But we did a series of those meetings. We actually went out, had these consultants, and our planning staff start engaging the public and start telling them exactly what we wanted to do.
And what did you want to do?
We wanted to change the face of public transit. We wanted to create shorter headways. We wanted to understand was our facilities and the needs that we had in the community working. We wanted to understand what passes were valuable to the public. There's a lot of things. So as we started getting their feedback in, we went in, we kind of just restructured. We designed a total restructure plan for the agency.
Based on the feedback
from
your riders.
From the riders. We took that plan and we went back to those same community groups, added some additional community groups and said, hey, this is what we're looking at. Before we presented routes, before we presented stops, we had started receiving some of their information on the executive level. They kind of started looking at, but I didn't feel like it was time to take it to community. So we went back and started just engaging with, all right, how would you feel about every 4 blocks?
Having a bus stop.
Mm-hmm. How would you feel about what transit amenities do you need at the bus stops?
A shelter,
trash can, benches, what do you need at these different locations? Those conversations went well. We took on average that we had to stop every block to 2 blocks. We said, well, looking at kind of the national average is about every 4 blocks. So we kind of brought that in. We said, well, we're going to just say average. We do a stop every 2 blocks. We're going to say the national average every 4 blocks. Can we all agree to meet a happy median? Say 3 blocks. And so it was taken well by the community, and the community helped us bring our stops down from 2,600 down to 1,100, which is major.
And you were able to position it such as, I didn't take out your bus stops. The community
took out the bus stops.
Yeah.
They agreed. And one of the things that I consider very strongly is we invite those elected officials that represents those districts to those meetings.
That's
we made
good.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did was, it was a SporTran meeting, but I allowed those officials to call that meeting. I asked those officials to say, well, you call a public meeting in your district to say that you're going to be there to discuss SporTran. And we allowed them to come out. So it was not only SporTran officials there,
right,
but it was city council, parish officials
Yeah.
there. The mayor showed up, It was
That's
great
beautiful.
because
so now they're invested in it.
now everybody's invested in it. And then when we finished, and before we unveiled the stops to the citizens and started unveiling the routes to the citizens, I personally, with one of our planning, we went out with those officials. We drove the routes. We looked at stops. We determined where these stops were going to be.
You didn't take them by surprise.
I didn't take them by surprise. And then we went together and presented that information.
Oh, that is beautiful.
We presented that information to those communities. So the buy-in wasn't just SporTran. It was buy-in from officials, buy-in from the SporTran officials, and buy-in from the community. So we all agreed. At that point in time, back in 2017, we made these changes. We actually went from 2,600 stops down to 900. We're back up to 1,100 now.
Yeah.
It's just based on, we had some needs in some communities that we need to do some things in that we, as part of this, and that's the thing that we've been able to show the community, is just because we said this was going to be our plan, we always told them there was room for growth, there was room for improvement. There's
not
gonna be
final,
It's
right?
not final. There's going to be route changes. And that's one thing as the agency lead that I try to push now, is I never want us to become stale again. We have
improvement,
we
right?
have got to be proactive. We get data. We have passenger counters. We need to look at that data. We study that data. That data is going to show us what our ridership is doing. And if that means that every 6 months that we need to go in and do some kind of small reboot, change a route, pull service here, add service there, look at heat maps, whatever we need to do, I want that information presented. And that's one thing that I made a promise to the community, is that we won't let them down again. We won't operate service for 25 years again,
right,
and just add a route and not go in and do that reboot. So we won't have to do this large-scale reboot again and change every route in the city on one day. I think we can do small reboots, get your input. So we still try to go at least once or twice a year now to those communities and just sit down and have those conversations, if it's working, if it's not working.
So how long was that whole process? Because the end result was overnight. You dropped your bus stops in half or more. You changed most of the routes in the city. How long did that whole process take to get there?
So that whole process started in early 2013, and we concluded with the opening service in November 2017. So right at a 4-year process.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a short process. It's a lot of studying. It's a lot of work.
200-some meetings, right?
200-some meetings, man hours you're going to put in.
Yeah.
And
did you have a dedicated team, or was it your existing staff?
It was my existing staff. We had consultants on the project, but, a lot of the things the consultants brought back to us. One thing that I believe has been in the positions that we are at our agencies is you don't send consultants to your community to talk about what needs to happen.
Thank you.
You need to go to the community and discuss what happens.
That's leadership.
And so, there were meetings where I went in, and a lot of people didn't like what I said. They weren't happy. But those are the people that after the meeting, when they stood up and I made a beeline to. I went to that person. I said, you know what? Hey, I want you to come sit down and talk to us. Another thing that we did that I think was very successful in this transition process is we created a transit improvement committee. We still have this committee now. I think you need to have something outside of your board, outside of your staff, that really kind of focus on some of the needs that you have, where you can have long, productive meetings to discuss some of this stuff even before you make it public.
Like what kind of people were on there?
We worked with, we have about 4 hospital institutions, medical institutions in the
representatives
city.
from there?
So we got representatives from there. I didn't just want any representatives. I personally went and met with the CEOs of these organizations and told them that I need them from 1 year. After that year, they could put somebody else on there, but I need you.
The decision maker.
I need the decision maker this year. Because one of our biggest, my highest traffic stop is LSU Health Center in Shreveport.
Okay.
I need you there, because when I do this is going to affect you.
That's right. Yeah.
I need you pushing from your leadership at your position. What do your employees need? What does your patients need?
Yeah.
And so bringing them on, we work with all the universities in our area. We got certain riders. We posted on every bus for certain riders to present, to be a part of the transit. So we ended up with a group of about 20 people, major employers in the city, hospitals, schools, school districts, and those citizens. And we brought some of our staff in, and we put all these people around the table. So every time before we present to the public, we brought all this information to them. We sat down, we vetted it together, and it gave those institutions, those school districts say, hey, well, we really use this route to get people to this school. We have our own school buses, but we kind of depend on, because we don't do the last mile transportation if you stay within a mile of school. We depend on this route. And if you make this change and you don't get them there to 9 o'clock, so it kind of allowed us to vet before we even got to the community with a lot of that.
How often did you meet with them, would you say?
We met with them twice a month.
Okay, that's good.
And so it was a very active group. And we still now, we meet every quarter with that same group of people.
Okay.
And we talk about feedback. So we implemented on our website through a system called Track It. We implemented real technology so that when people submit their complaints in, we can kind of have a trend and a track of what those complaints are.
Have they become champions of your system?
And they have. They've become champions, and it allows me to take what the customers are saying versus what the director's KPIs are, merge that down together and see, what am I hearing the same about?
So what were the changes? Walk me through how it's different today than what it was when you started this process. So you've already told me about the bus stops. What about the routes and the time, headways and all that stuff?
So all headways are now under 25 minutes.
Okay, beautiful. What was it before, like up to an hour?
It could be over an hour.
Wow.
It could be an hour, and I think our longest route was like an hour and 25 minutes.
Like the loops around the city?
Loop around the city was an hour and 25 minutes.
Yeah, so unnecessary, right?
And when you break all that down and put it into smaller routes, we had to build these facilities. We built 3 facilities, one large intermodal facility that we've now partnered with Greyhound and Amtrak Thruway service to bring service into, working with a couple other partners to be in that facility shortly. But also it made for expansion for Amtrak in the future for its train. But with all that being said, we built also 2 smaller facilities. Those were regions of the areas looking at suburbs.
Looking at what?
Suburbs in the community.
Okay.
And one of the things we hadn't done was we hadn't focused on those suburbs. We grew a lot.
Yeah. You were in the city and not in the suburbs, right?
We went in
Yeah.
the suburbs, and we grew a lot. The cities grew a lot. We grew out. We added a line. We added 10 minutes to that bus route
Right.
to get out there.
Right.
But nobody out there wanted to ride it because now it took an hour and 40
Yeah.
minutes to get
Yeah.
back to where I wanted to go. So we looked at how do we put these small centers in place that allows buses to now have connections and more of a connector system to main hub if you need to.
Right.
But a lot of the places that they wanted to go, we just need to build direct routes. And
Right.
that's what we got from those public meetings. We want to go to this area. And we filter, that's like 5 high priority routes of areas that people want to go. And we have from all facilities, we have service going to those high priority areas. Of course, there's going to be some areas that we don't touch, so you might have to transfer facilities. But that's minimal when you look back at how do you truly build your network.
Yes.
And where do people want to go?
Have you changed some of the routes to where you don't need a schedule? The bus just comes every 15 minutes.
So
like
we have several
headway
routes like that. So one of the things we put in is a new downtown circulator. Our main transfer hub used to be in the downtown area. A lot of people are saying, well, people are moving to downtown. Well, I hear what they're saying across America. Well, that's
Right.
wonderful.
Yeah.
But guess what? In Shreveport, that's not what the people want.
Okay.
The people want the facility where they wanted the facility.
Where they're at,
Where
right?
they're at.
Yeah.
People wasn't in downtown. Our downtown is revitalizing and going through a lot of things. So how do we be more progressive? So we looked at adding that downtown circulator service, said we'll have a bus hit every stop every 10 minutes.
That's
but
beautiful.
high frequency that commutes back to our intermodal terminal. That was one of those things we put in without a schedule. We also did commuter routes between the hubs that are not on schedules. We
Okay.
have one between our Southwest hub that hits every 6 minutes. So if you end up at another facility,
Right.
you need to transfer to another route, it's only 6 minutes delay
great.
from you getting to that facility to you getting to another facility. We have
Right.
a 6-minute headway, and we have one in one of our other counties that was counted for out, which was Bossier Parish. There's a 10-minute headway on there that you get from that facility back into our main intermodal facility.
So you got a lot of the routes that are coming into hubs, a spoke and hub network, so to speak. So they're shorter, and then you can transfer if you need to go somewhere else.
Yes.
And so what's the end result? Ridership is up, right?
Ridership
Tell me
is
about
way
that.
up. It's a great feeling to see your ridership starting to go up again. I've shared with so many, one of the disheartening things that I had when I first took over the agency is to see ridership just on a steady decline. I'm like, well, something has to happen here. I realize that across America there's different and there's changes that are happening, but we can do something here. And with all the things that we've done and the changes that we have made, I think, honestly, the ridership growth at this point, you're up 30,000 a month. It's huge.
That is huge, yeah.
That's huge. And,
Yep.
and we attribute that to, we put the people's plan, the people's vision, and we're hearing them. We're still hearing them.
Right.
And we're still going to make those changes that they want to make. And I think that is going to be what is going to create these networks. Not only do you listen to the people, I need to make sure I say this, not only do you listen to the people, but you also listen at your staff.
Yes.
Because they're going to give you information, even after you enact some of this stuff. If you're open with your staff, they're going to come back and give you the real feedback. You need to cut this route. Or you need to change this. I think if we went down this road here, I'm just dead between here and there.
Right.
But if we went down here and looped around here, this would peak up. We've done a lot of those things, and going back and looking at that, that's why we see the trend of ridership increasing, because we're listening to people, we're listening to the staff,
Yeah.
and we're making those adjustments.
And I was impressed that you told me you have a good partnership with your union, and you've created a new health center. Tell them how that works, how that's going to work or is working.
So what we have done is we worked closely with our ATU partners, and one of the things we wanted to do was I approached the union president one day and I say, hey, you're always talking about we need some kind of wellness program. Guess what? I have a new facility where we're bringing online, we're renovating, and we want to make a wellness center for the employees. What can we do in order to partner? So they have, because we're not allowed to go out in the community as an authority to advocate for different funding and different things. So, but we put that out for ATU, and they went out to different community partners and some of their resources and collected funds to buy all the exercise equipment to put into the new wellness center, which doesn't make us spend public funds on putting exercise equipment in, but it brings on a wellness program for them. We put in a quiet room for them in this facility, and it gives back to your staff. I mean, these are the people who takes care of our citizens every day, takes care of the executive staff every day, because without them, the system does not move. And to give back to them in this way, I think is great. And it goes from, SporTran always saying no to SporTran is finally saying yes. I've heard that so many times throughout the community is, well, you told us no. Well, we're here now to say yes. What can we do? I don't want to just tell you no. I want to say, what can we do together as a partnership?
That's great. One last question is, what's next for your agency? AVs, what's coming next?
So what's next is we're looking at several different concepts for our facilities, looking at working on food deserts, things that are somewhat, people say are outside of transit, but I say they're inside of transit because I'm kind of the out-of-the-box type person. And I believe that, if you bring people somewhere, you need to provide them the resources. So let's create a multimodal resource center that brings those agencies and resources that transit passengers need all into one facility to try to help with their daily commute, that they don't have to get off 3 or 4 different places to go places. Some of those resources are right there in the facility. Bring food into those facilities. But not only do that, let's create opportunities. Let's create different modes of transportation that's outside, that gives them something fun and new. So one of the things we're looking at running from this new multimodal resource center is AV transportation.
Autonomous vehicles.
Autonomous vehicles. Shreveport is a heavy casino town.
Okay.
And we have 7 riverboat casinos in the area. So right now we're looking at how can we run between our intermodal terminal, which is only about a mile from these riverboats, and create a route that serves the casino district on a high frequency, as well as serve the intermodal terminal, and helps out with the downtown circulator service. So it's a new option. It gives option to food, because around a lot of casinos might not agree with me, but everybody don't want casino food all the time. So we're trying to figure out how do we put people on transit. Everybody's not going to try transit, but if you set the means and modes for additional type transportation, I think it opens new doors for people who are non-transit riders to maybe say, well, let me hop on this autonomous shuttle and just see. And then they might ride to that food court one day and they say, oh, this is not too bad.
Yeah.
And maybe they might move over to one of my electric buses one day. Let me just try that big electric bus. And maybe they'll ride that transit bus. Maybe they'll ride to festivals if they're not at everyday transit riders. So what I'm trying to do is open up means, resources that will attract the non-traditional riders, but also take care of the current transit riders.
Yeah.
And that's my main goal in putting the new system together. So opportunities, that's where we're headed. We're headed for this resource center for our passengers. We're headed to attract new passengers, and we're looking heavily at how do we look at what's the future of public transportation for its vehicles.
That's awesome. Well, Dinero, thanks for being with us today. We did something today that I haven't done on many of these episodes, which is walk our listeners through the steps that are necessary to make big change in a transit system. Sounds like you've gone through them very well, and you've got a great vision for the future. Thanks for being our guest today on Transit Unplugged.
We appreciate it.
You've been listening to Transit Unplugged, powered by Trapeze Group. To stay up to date, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or join the conversation at transitunplugged.com. Thanks for listening.